Thank you, Honourable Schikkeling.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Chair, you know, the General said a very interesting thing. She said they're going to go to war on extortionists, and I understand that. However, I'm really concerned because how do you go to war if all your soldiers are not fighting the same war as what you are fighting? We need everybody to fight the same war. I mean, a lot of those soldiers are themselves involved in criminal activity. And I think that is something that we have to focus on because combating crime is definitely not just one person's responsibility. And I am concerned that you said you only have monthly meetings. As the chairperson rightfully said, this is a matter that has been said to be of national importance. I think you should have meetings more frequently, and I think we should be informed more often. It is obviously concerning that a member of the police force has now, that is linked to criminal activity, has been promoted, because what does this say to the other officers that are trying to walk the straight and narrow? Because clearly there's a lack of consequence management within the police. And then I would like to know, I mean, will the members that are deployed to the task force to combat extortion undergo security screening? Because we have to make sure that the people that are the soldiers that are fighting the war actually are there for the right reason. The national hotline is something that I do look forward to, because I think there are provinces that we are lacking in your report. I don't see anything from the Northern Cape. I am from the Northern Cape. I know that there are issues of extortion there. I think a lot of it happens is because people don't report it, especially in your smaller communities, because they're scared, which leads me to my second question is, the safety of whistleblowers in South Africa really is questionable. And it's no, I mean, there's literally hundreds of people that have been murdered because of whistleblowers. We can speak about Babita Dekoran as one of them. But how will you protect the business owners that actually do come forward? Because we can't expect business owners to close their businesses for weeks at a time while we investigate issues of extortion. It is obviously a time sensitive. And if I look at your report, some of those cases date back to 2020, 2022. We can't expect a case to take 4 or 5 years because it will never end. It perpetuates the system. And as you have rightfully said, the extortionists come and they ask for 1,000 Rand, and next time it's 2,000 Rand, and it just grows and grows and grows. So if we can't protect the business owners and our whistleblowers, people are not going to report these crimes. So we have to find a better way of looking after our whistleblowers. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Schikkeling. Honourable Meshoe.
Thank you, Chairperson. One of my questions have been covered by Honourable Schikkeling about the national hotline. We have been having hotlines for years. How is this hotline going to be different from the others? And at times, the number that is given to the public as a hotline is not even answered. The phone just rings and rings and rings. So how can we have confidence that the new hotline they're talking about is going to yield desired results? And then secondly, in his introduction, the General Masemola said, we have a strategy on how to deal with corruption. I can say the same thing about the strategy to deal with corruption. For years, we have been complaining about corruption. We have one minister after the other. They promise they're going to root out rotten apples, but those rotten apples seem to be well-rooted. They can't get rid of them. So how, General Masemola, is this a new strategy you are referring to, or is it the old strategy that we've been hearing about all the years? My third question, looking at page 17 of the presentation, when one looks at the numbers showing convictions, if you compare that to the number of cases, Gauteng is an example. Out of 2,284 reported cases, arrests were only 828 and conviction only 45. Where is the problem? Why can't we get more convictions? Where is the problem? And page 28, addressing the corruption in government departments by vetting and constant integrity testing of officials. May I have more clarity on that? When is this, how often is this constant integrity testing? And when we talk about integrity testing, what are we really talking about? When you have promotions that are questionable, when you have people that have to be punished and they are promoted, and yet they are supposed to be going through constant integrity testing. Who is being tested and who is not tested? Because we have high-ranking officials also who are fingered in some serious crimes. So I want to know how do you quantify constant? Constant integrity testings of officials, and who are we talking about when you talk about these officials? Are the leaders, are the directors also subjected to this, or who is subjected to this constant integrity testing of officials? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Reverend. I'm going to go over to Honourable Kola Barnard.
Thanks, Chair. The first construction site invasions began, as we all know, in Mlazi and KwaMashu. That was in 2014, 2015. As everyone in this room knows, this construction mafia crime is simple. You pay us a cut of the tender or just an amount we determine, otherwise we'll shut you down or kill you. I've been trying to pin down why it's taken SAPS so long to seemingly take it seriously. Even today, with the arrests that you've made, the levels of convictions at 7.5% is pathetic. I mean, it's absolutely pathetic. So it's worthwhile being one of these construction mafia members, because the likelihood of you being convicted is minimal. So 9 years later, and this committee, since they started up, and this committee is forced to call you in to explain. And of course, the construction mafia has led to all we see today. It could have been nipped in the bud at the time, but there were certain politicians in KZN now under arrest who joined with the extortionists, who employed the extortionists and encouraged them, and that now has spread to the school feeding schemes, everything that you referred to, the granting of tenders. Every single area in our country is now at the mercy of this kind of behavior. The question is, why wasn't it stamped out when it began? Did the minister at the time, Nathi Nhleko, instruct SAPS not to deal with it? Was there an order? Did the National Police Commission at the time reappear? Two names I thought I'd never have to say again. Did they perhaps draw a line in the sand and say, don't do it, focus on something else? I want to know why you were hamstrung at that level, because that's the root cause of everything we're facing today. It was the era when Generals Libya and Sabia were under such enormous pressure because they were the honest guys, and they did everything in their power to get rid of every honest cop around. So we need to look back and say, who's at the root cause of this entire catastrophe? I'm interested if you have any ideas. Secondly, the committee requested in your presentation today that it covers the intervention plan resources redirected to affected areas, measurable outcomes, funds allocated, and successes to date. I know there's information that should not be released, but as far as what's missing, I mean, the resources redirected, measurable outcomes, or funds allocated should have been included. I'm interested to know why they were not. It's claimed that the SAPS initially saw this type of extortion as merely a passive source of income, not high-risk source of income like drug dealing, but that's had to be rethought very dramatically. What links have you established between the proceeds of the construction mafia specifically being used to bankroll kidnappings, the drug and prostitution syndicates, terrorist activities, even the land invasions, and many, many more? There surely must be determined links between those. I sit primarily on the JSCI. I'm most interested in what role, if any, the State Security Agency is playing in assisting you in identifying and combating the extortion syndicates. I noticed on your list of stakeholders, there's no State Security Agency. Do they not assist you? Are they not doing what they're paid to do? They should be giving you the insights into the cross-border and international syndicates, and there should be a very close tie-up there. I was interested that it wasn't referred to. Earlier this year, the Eastern Cape Division of the High Court handed down a rather scathing judgment against you for failing to properly investigate the ongoing attacks into Intercape mainliner long-haul buses, drivers and passengers. The committee requested you provide quarterly reports. The National Commissioner was requested to submit a report on the reasons for why the previous court order to develop a safety plan just hadn't happened. Where are the reports? Why aren't they here? I don't understand. When you've got a request to provide these, why aren't they being provided? Now, we do have a problem, and my colleague here to my left referred to it, that many communities around the country see what they believe is police going to, for example, drug lords, and then they stay a few minutes and then they leave. And everybody in the community knows they're being paid off by the drug lords. And in the same way, police members are suspected of running stock theft syndicates. You see the poorest paid SAF members in mansions, and the locals will take me there and point and say, how does that guy afford that mansion on a really lowly salary? So now we have the construction mafia. And they know there are police members involved. How are you going to find that out? Are you doing the correct checks and balances into what people earn and what they're spending? Because it's got to be there. It's got to be a way to find it out who's involved. So how many of you arrested? How many SAPS members have been arrested for being involved in the construction mafia? How many have been jailed? And finally, if a manager of a construction project is threatened, as they are, in one case I'm aware of in KZN, a gang of AK-wielding men broke into her office as the manager, put a bullet on the desk in front of her. That's one's for you, that's for your husband, these three of your children. They named them all, they knew where they went to school. They're on top of it, way ahead of us. And this particular woman just stood up and resigned on the spot. Now, I know it's illegal to pay extortionists, but if your life is being threatened, your children's lives are being threatened, you really are between a rock and a hard place. I understand what the National Police Commissioner said when he said, but we have an issue where they may pay a small bribe, and then they realize that's illegal, but now they're being asked not for 1,000, for 50,000. They can't afford it. They come to the police, and now they want to duck and dive because they actually broke the law in the first place. But can you blame them? Have you ever arrested the victim of extortion who has attempted to pay a small bit? I mean, is that because individuals running businesses are now desperate? They feel they can't turn to you because they may well end up in jail themselves. They feel they're going to die if they don't pay. So they either have to walk around covered head to toe in Kevlar, or they're going to just chuck in the towel. And we've got entire businesses that have been drummed into the ground. One idiotic lawyer put in the contract, we will only use local labor. From the next week, we want double the salary. And the following week, we want double the salary. They were rioting, it was the Mgeni overpass. They rioted right the way through, bankrupted the company, and killed umpteen people, burning trucks and things. So I don't understand what protection you can possibly give individual companies, individual company owners, because unless you literally have a gang standing around that construction site, and I've attempted to phone local police saying, there's a mob of 200 invading this place, this shopping mall here. He sneered at me. He said, but you know the process, they must take it to court. I said, but it's your job to stop crime. They're busy trashing the place. Oh, no, not my job. And it's a problem. It's a big problem. So I think the strategy has to be a lot tighter and a lot more substantial than perhaps you're letting on. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Carla Barnard. Honourable Ghana.
Thanks very much, Chair. and good morning. Ordinarily, I will, I will have started by saying I welcome the presentation. But I must say, having gone through it last night, and I was telling the chair earlier, it is saying very little. So the last week or the week before, the week before it was the questions to the security cluster. We tried to ask the minister responsible for intelligence around the involvement and whether intelligence is fully capacitated to deal with this particular matter. She ducked and dived. There were 3 questions. I mean, it's not usual that 3 members from different political parties will ask similar questions because everyone were concerned. And when I read, even in the challenges, one can be mistaken for thinking that the police yourselves, you are full capacitated. So in your challenges, you don't talk about just the capacity to deal with this. So the DM starts with the challenges of the police service. And to the point that Honorable Kolabana raises around intelligence, both state security, but also crime intelligence. You'll know that in the last meeting, DM Matal, I asked the question around crime intelligence, because let's be honest with ourselves. Even the point around the communities, there's a loss of trust in the ability of the South African Police Service to protect communities. And that has led to, one, people paying, because not paying has got dire consequences. 2, as you'll know in the last meeting when you were presenting the quarterly crime stats, you are starting to see an increase in mob justice and people being killed in that way. That speaks to the loss of trust. The low conviction, and what was the challenge, Lieutenant General, in how you presented, and sometimes I listen, is that because you were going slide by slide, line by line, you had promised to come back on why the convictions are low, and you did not. And in your challenges, and so there's we are not the first country to face what we are going through. As you'll know, the mafias in the US, and there's a lot. There are books, documentaries around that. So one of the laws that needs to be amended urgently, it's poker. Because to be honest, within our legislative framework, we do not have a definition of what extortion is. We haven't defined it. It doesn't. So even if you arrest now, and this is what leads to the loss of trust, is that they see the police, the uniformed police, they come and arrest someone. Then, when that person appears before a magistrate, then they're like, we can't really, the charge, the one that you are trying to charge this person on it's not strong, and then it's released. And in your challenges, whilst I take that there's a stream that looks at poker, but the way that you're mentioning it as a mitigating, you are talking about a maximum utilization of poker. But when I was going through poker, not for these purposes, because I mean I've been working on it for some time. Even the 1998 definition of racketeering, as it relates to gang and criminal activities, that I can tell you that it's inadequate. But from yourself as the police, you don't mention it. It's like you are kind of scared to say, guys, the laws, you are lawmakers, and the laws are making it difficult for. We made arrests. Yes, they are minimal, just over 6,000 arrests, and out of that we convicted less than 200. Which means there's something in terms of the law. So the questions around the capacity of crime intelligence. I know the minister last time did mention that there are efforts to try to capacitate and rebuild the crime intelligence. But without that aspect, because this is not a once-off, this is not just a Vispol problem. And if you think of it, I think all of you will have been in the police force. So when Nyaupe started, which starts in Durban, so construction mafia starts in Durban. Nyaupe starts in Durban. And it's called Wonga at the time that it starts. It's almost dismissed as like, it's a hyper localized. But right now, to the point that I raised during the debate, you go to the deep rurals in Zanini, you find Nyaupe. And what this practice, so there might very well be organized criminals, but now people are seeing that it's happening. It's happening in Durban. So people who couldn't crack into the construction mafia, then look at the next target. Then gangs are formed. It's now it was then the spaza shops. Now they close that. Where do people go? They then go to RAF. Then a gang closes RAF, so now they control RAF. Then now it has gone to the funerals, as you'll know. That when there's a funeral, they know that's the funeral policy that pays out. Now the family must pay before they bury. Now the gang controls that. Now it has gone to the pensioners on the day that the SASSA pays out. Because now it has spread out, and my concern is the ability to take it out. Because some of it, it's almost like, if we can put it, unorganized. It just happens in a village. It's not linked to let's call it a top boss somewhere. So the top boss resides in that village, and it only terrorizes people in that village. It's not linked to the neighboring village and so forth. And even when you arrest, and I would like maybe for yourself, General Masimula, and maybe the head of the detective service, to go and fully explain that table in an honest way. Why less than 200 people are convicted. And what are they convicted of? Because sometimes we say it's conviction. Yes, someone would have reported it as these people were trying to extort. And people, maybe they don't call it extortion. They call it threats. So you find that a person is convicted, but because they were threatening someone or maybe convicted of just assault. Because someone, when they refuse to pay, as we know what they do, they threaten you. First, they hit you. You don't pay, they hit you so hard. Is to go into say, these convictions, if we are to be honest, what did the courts convict the people of? And whether we link it to extortion. They might have been arrested for trying to extort, but when they are convicted, maybe they are convicted of assault, they are convicted of pointing a firearm, they are convicted, which does not deal with the practice. And that's one aspect that's missing. And I want your honest reflection on the POCA Act, because the tool in the main that it's in the hands of the police in this particular instance and the justice is primarily the POCA. Obviously, the other asset forfeiture and the SIU comes in, but that is the enabling legislation. Is it adequate? Do you feel that it empowers you to do what you need to do? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Garner. I'm going to go to Honourable Mokoena, from where, okay, and then Honourable Letlape. And then from there, I've divided all the questions into, because there's already about 16 questions that I've listed. So then we'll go through them, and then we'll go to Honourable Adams, Honourable James, and then we'll continue again from there. Okay, Honourable Mokoena, over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. There is a reference on the Priority Committee on Extortion on the government framework. When was the committee established? And what is the assessment performance so far in coping extortion? I thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, in the presentation on page 5, it says that in the President's Nation Address in 2020, after his address where he spoke about extortion, there was a committee, a specialized police team or teams. I want to know if there is a report on particularly those specialized police teams. What have they done, and what was the mandate of those teams? And if the reports that we get now, or the statistics that we get now, has to do with the work that was done by those teams. But again, I want to speak on the table in page 17. The number of convictions is very worrisome. And I think it also goes to the question of what is classified to be an extortion. What are other crimes that are classified to be under extortion? I think Honorable Ghana mentioned it. Because we need to know, why is the conviction rate so low? What could be the reasons you would arrest 6,000 people and only convict less than 200? But even the arrests themselves, so in Gauteng, there's 2,200 cases, but there's only 800 arrests that were done. What hinders SAPS to arrest people from the number of cases that were lodged or that were registered? We need to know that, because you can't have 2,000 cases and only arrest 800, unless you then classify the other cases to not being relevant to the case. And I want to get a report on how many of these cases are of police officers, because you know, the crisis is that SAPS is given a responsibility of arresting these extortionists. But if you already have rotten members inside, it becomes very difficult. The DM, when we started, said some of these reports would have to have closed sessions for them. But the reality is that these closed sessions, someone somewhere will have this report. And that is why we also need to be very careful when we deal with such crimes, because these crimes are informed by people who've got inside reports, who know the strategies of police. They know when we are going to do oversight. They know when the police are going to go and search a particular place. So we need to do a serious vetting inside the South African police services. I also want to check with the hotline. How many of these cases were reported via the hotline? And if these cases that were reported, were they tip-offs or were they registered crimes already? And what is the response time on the tip-offs? So how long does it take SAPS to respond to a tip-off? And how do we do that as well? But with regards to, we need to have a thorough awareness program in communities. Our people need to know what extortion is. Most of them, you said in the presentation that they don't report. They don't report because they don't know what is extortion. And we have not gone to communities to educate them on what is extortion. What are the classifications and crimes linked to extortion? And I saw in your work stream 4, you say that you do training and awareness and all of that of communities. So what are these programs that we have done in communities, making them aware of this particular crime and how SAPS responds to it? And then how do we monitor these projects, these construction mafias? So you say you target these big projects where extortionists also target. How do you monitor them? How do you ensure that these projects are protected from extortionists? Is there a particular pattern that you do? Do you monitor on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis? How do you do this monitoring? And at what point do you then interfere or come in and say there is a particular crime that is being done and SAPS then takes over? What is the criteria of the selection of these police officers who are going to be part of these task forces? And that goes to vetting as well. How are we going to vet them? Because if you are going to have police officers who are going to deal with this particular crime, it involves a lot of money. And we know that there's a serious crisis. Everyone is crying about not getting enough resources, but what we need to be aware of is that there is a lot of money involved in this particular crime. And we are going to have to be very selective, but to also keep tabs on the members who are going to be in this task force. So I don't know what is going to be the criteria of selecting these officers, but also to ensure that they don't fall into the trap in the process. If you deal with a 5 million tender and you give a police officer, making an example, who has financial issues at home, the chances is that this particular person, if he was confronted and he was given money, they will most likely take that money. And that's where sometimes the conditions, the human conditions that are facing police officers are confronted with principles where a person must choose between what will my child eat today as opposed to the principle and mandate that you're given. And those are some of the things that we need to consider as well. And for this particular crime, is there resources particularly put aside for it? Or are we going to have to deal with it like any other crime? Because I remember in Parliament there was a motion that there must be a committee, an ad hoc committee that's going to deal with extortion. But the majority of the House felt that this particular portfolio committee must deal with this crime. is there resources put aside for it? And maybe we should, Chair, propose for a much sooner closed session with SAPS, with intelligence, with justice, because SAPS alone cannot deal with this crime. And for us to ask SAPS, why is the conviction rate so low? We'll ask the question, but we know where the answers will come from. So maybe we should have a closed session with all the other committees that speaks and that has mandate to ensure that we end this crime. Have a closed session with them. We need to be given the depth and the insights of this crime, because at this point we are just dealing with stats and just the basics, which also makes it very difficult for us as members of the committee to indulge and to engage on this crime, because we've got limited information and access to information on this particular crime. So I want to make a proposal that we have a closed session with the other committees as soon as possible so that we conclude on this matter. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Letlape, and noted. Then lastly, Honourable Adams. Nearly threw something at me.
Thank you, Chair. I thought we were going to have our first fight now. Please note that I'm not accusing anyone of anything. But the South African Police Service purchased cell phone grabbers worth over 100 million rand from an Israeli company. We purchased 4G cell phone grabbers in the 5G era. These things are obsolete. They're locked up in Pretoria. Our records show, and we may be wrong, that Parliament never approved this purchase. Can you confirm that this purchase was made via the proper channels? And can you please tell us what the consequence management is for the people in supply chain management who wasted the money while police stations don't have police vehicles? So for those that don't know, a cell phone grabber is what enables detectives to go into someone's cell phone, look at their WhatsApps, listen into their conversations. It's a vital piece of equipment. Now, General Lashaba, our head, Major General Lashaba, our head of secret operations, has a 500 million rand a year budget. He returned 123 million rand of that money last year. 120 million rand unspent. Now we have a crisis in extortion and kidnapping, and the department is underspending. Is there consequence management? I'd also like to say that General Lashaba and General Kumalo are the only two people who can authorize the use of the 2 cell phone grabbers in operation. And the investigating units are telling us that they have to beg these people for it. They are also saying that on the issue of the cell phone grabbers, neither General Lashaba or General Kumalo is an operational manager, but they are in charge of operations. They are hamstringing the people that are trying to find the people that are kidnapped, and they are trying to find the extortionists. In short, what we are being told by the operational units is because of the chain of command, if you are being extorted or have been kidnapped, you have an almost zero chance of being assisted by SAPS. Please explain to us what the consequence management for this is going to be. I want to end by saying that the head of crime intelligence, again, Major General Kumalo, he's just capped the reward for informers at 3,000 rand. We are fighting a multi-billion rand industry in extortion and kidnapping, and we are expecting people to risk their lives for 3,000 rand. They'd probably get 300,000 rand if they went to the criminals. Please, anyone make that make sense? I know of rewards of 500,000 rand that were paid in the past, and it was very well worth it because the right people got locked up. We've just taken away the incentive. Is there going to be consequence management for this? Now, I want to just say on the issue of extortion, I was accused of extortion in 2020. When I drove past the building site in Mitchell's Plain and I realized that not a single colored person was working on the site. I walked up and I closed the site. I was charged. The judge threw the case out of court because even the contractor admitted I didn't ask him for a cent. So certain people do have very, very valid reasons for stopping building sites, especially if the local community is not included. Not everyone's an extortionist. But on the topic of extortion, I feel that this committee must also speak on the topic of inflation. I'll give you a quick rundown. 1 minute, Chair. There's a company before the Belleville Commercial Crimes Court on Friday for price inflation in the city. They've been red flagged by the city. The province has just given these people the Somerset West tender. Somerset Hospital tender. This is the type of criminality that we don't talk about. And this is the type of criminality that I feel that SAPS needs a dedicated unit for. But I only had those 3 questions. I'm really looking forward to the answers. Thank you. One last thing, Chair. The promotion of the general with the question marks around him. Has anybody on this committee filed a request or asked the question as to how this happened? Because I can tell you that the ground troops are grumbling about it. What we as the committee would need to know is if the seniors are as upset as the soldiers are. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Adams. Honourable James.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Good morning to the Deputy Ministers and the leadership. I just want to reflect on the presentation that was made under operators, modus operandi. You don't have the invasion of houses. If you can maybe just add that, because in most of the communities, these syndicates actually take over people's homes. So I don't see anything in there about homes and cars. Under your stakeholder slide, I want to ask, because I've been part of so many of these net joint operations, have you actually engaged all of these stakeholders before adding them to the plan? You would often find that the operation kicks off and then we have excuses afterwards from the courts and from justice saying that they weren't aware, so these cases don't get prioritized. Has there been prior engagement with all of those stakeholders that was listed? Because I find when I look at this plan, it almost mirrors many other plans that I've seen. So it almost feels as if though it's a copy and paste and we just do small changes here and there. So this is why I want to ask, has there been engagement with stakeholders? Your stakeholders also, I think you need to include the Department of Housing, based on my prior remark. Local government as well as Home Affairs. I don't see Home Affairs being part of your stakeholders when we know that many of these syndicates are also foreign nationals. So please can that be added? I also don't see the Provincial Substance Abuse Forum that addresses issues of drugs as part of your stakeholders. The Provincial Substance Abuse Forum should actually be in possession of SAPS's mini drug master plan. That is a question that I also want to know. Does this department have a national mini drug master plan that reports to the Central Drug Authority? The Taxi Association, I also don't see that as being part of the stakeholder engagement. Under extortion case management, and I think everyone has highlighted this, the low conviction rate. Could that possibly, is there a possibility that we can reopen these 2,284 cases? And now that we have a planned approach, can we see designated detectives that understands how to actually go through these dockets? Because we find most times the reasons why we only have 800 cases that makes it to court, it's because of the lack of intelligence and the way that docket is written. So can we revisit those cases with designated detectives? Also, one of the reasons why we have such a low conviction rate, I always say we have these amazing plans on paper, but we don't make sure that we have actually the resources in place to support the plan. Forensics, I spoke about this the last time. Are they capacitated? Do we have enough staff to analyze ballistics and whatever else is needed to actually finalize these cases? Recommendations, I want to say that I worry about these deployments, and I want to ask DM and the National Commissioner, these deployments, where are these people coming from? Because as things stand, we know that already we have a heavily under-resourced SAPS. So does this mean we are going to take from various provinces? Who is the deployment? For how long is this operation going to be going to last? Is it a 3-month operation? Is it a 6-month operation? Has this operation been costed? What is the cost implications in here? Because sometimes halfway through an operation, we find that the monies and the resources has ran out and an operation comes to an end. The duration, I think, and then also lifestyle audits. There's more than one way to skin a cat. We don't get any results or feedback in terms of successes when it comes to lifestyle audits. I think that is my contribution for now. And Chair, just allow me to thank, I forgot to do this previously, General Sibia, thank you so much for being prompt in responding to all the messages that I send you. It's really refreshing. I really hope that the Minister's office can follow suit, because I've written a letter to the Minister's office, I think about a month ago, and to date we haven't received a response. Thank you.